Welcome back to the channel, everyone. Today we're here with yet another NFL draft video as the NFL Combine workouts start this Thursday. We have a lot to talk about within the NFL draft, and we're going to cover a lot of those things in today's video as we talk about a very well-respected and decorated NFL analyst, and that's none other than Daniel Jeremiah. This is a guy who's connected in these NFL circles. You talk about GMs, you talk about execs, you talk about directors of player personnel. He's in line and connected with all of those guys for each and every team. So what you can see in this list and what you're going to see in this list are some things you can take to the bank a little bit. We've seen his mock drafts, but now we're talking about top 50 2.0. I just want to react and kind of have the conversation in this video, and I don't want to take too much time taking away from some of these great players that we're going to have in the first round and second round of this draft. Now, let's get into it. And as you can see, I haven't even scrolled yet. This is authentic, real, raw, everything you could expect. We're reacting to this at the same time. So I'm going to scroll slow. You can't go too fast because you'll see everybody on the list. Now, number one, you got Caleb Williams. And I think when we look at a guy like Caleb Williams, you have to say, okay, franchise quarterback, can make every throw, 6'1", 215. You add him in a design running game. You think about, okay, off platform, can play within structure. And the biggest question you're going to have to say is, with my offensive coordinator, my quarterback coach, do I feel comfortable enough? Because there are some things that you could nitpick about Caleb Williams. You say, okay, he has the 10 to 15 yard right in front of him. Why is he looking 30 yards down the football field? Why is he trying to go for the big play? But I feel like, okay, you have to look at the context with some of those situations with the defense that he had, even with kind of the supporting cast that he had at USC. This was a football team. You come off of a Heisman Trophy year. There are a lot of expectations, and it just didn't pan out to what we thought it would be. So he's pressing in some of those football games, playing hero ball, as a lot of people like to call it. But I think overall, you take a step back. I really like Caleb Williams, and I'm interested to see where Drake may land in this top 50. Now, let's get over to number two. These guys won't really need big time introductions, and this is a guy who needs no big time introduction at all. Marvin Harrison Jr., very, very good receiver in the game of football, going to be a very, very good receiver in the NFL. The son of great Hall of Fame wide receiver Marvin Harrison. So you think about, okay, that's the pedigree. I already got some good things running in my bloodline, but then we start to talk football. There's really an argument that you could say for the past 2 years, Heisman Trophy finalist, Biletnikoff winner. This guy, when you look at last year and you look at the year before that, where you had C.J. Stroud, could we say he was the best wide receiver in college football for those past 2 years? Now I say, okay, you have to think there's some very good guys. You got Neighbors, Adunze, you got Luther Burden. He's coming out next year. You got Ibuka. A lot of different receivers that we talk about when we talk football. But Marvin Harrison Jr., you look at the size, a big receiver, big body, but can play X, can fight the press, and can create access as a wide receiver. I like him at number two, and this is really a no-brainer. Now, getting over to number three, this is where I say, okay, I got some things, and I got to scroll slow so I can know where the last sentence falls off. But, okay. You got Roma Dunze. This may be a shocker to some people. It's kind of a shocker to me. My wide receiver two in this NFL draft is Malik Neighbors, but I'm looking at Roma Dunze. I'm going to talk about the write-up a little bit because this was the conversation which I had. I said, okay, do we feel it's close enough with Malik Neighbors and Roma Dunze? I really like Marvin Harrison Jr. as my wide receiver one. Some teams are looking at Neighbors as their wide receiver one. That's what I'm hearing around the circles. But you say, does it come down to scheme fit? It's not so much that Malik Neighbors, what he can do after the catch, how he creates access as a wide receiver, what he can do as a route runner in the intermediate and getting down the football field. It's not just that, but it's also, do I feel like is an X? Is that strong type of receiver? And also, Malik Neighbors can get down the football field and make some strong contested catches. But Roma Dunze, we start to look at it. Just like Marvin Harrison Jr., that big body, prototypical X receiver that you see in some offenses. Okay, he's 6'3", 215-ish, 210-ish, strong hands at the point of attack, can get at the catch point and come down with the 50-50 ball. That's Roma Dunze. And also, he's a silky smooth route runner. Now, I think what separates kind of Malik Neighbors is the burst. You're going to see getting in and out of those breaks, kind of a suddenness when you look at Malik Neighbors and his route running. But Roma Dunze is right there with those guys. So this is a very good receiver class. I'm going to be interested to see how these guys fall. And like I said, just the write-up. Adunze is a big, athletic wideout with exceptional hands. He can play outside or in the slot. He's refined and polished in everything he does on the field. These are the same types of things which I'm saying, and you're going to see with kind of these three receivers, receiver one, 1A, two, their releases. Malik Neighbors, and one thing you'll see with Malik Neighbors, when he releases off the football, he's coming down with that shoulder. To try to now evade that corner in the press route, now we're getting off of this, leaning that shoulder, and then creating access that way. But Roma Dunze, it's a different taste when you look at him coming off of the football in a stem within his route. So I like those things. Very good player. Let's get to number 4. Now, number 4, we got Neighbors. And this is what I was talking about when you talk about this draft. One thing I was saying, let's just have this conversation now. All of these players are going to be good football players, hopefully, in the right situation, in the right scheme. You look at the film, there's good film. That's why they're mocked in the top 50. But what I'll say is, just because quarterbacks may very realistically go 1, 2, and 3, Chicago, Washington, and the New England Patriots, just because that may happen does not mean there aren't better football players. Quarterbacks are going to go in this first round. Even if you feel that Michael Penix Jr., Bo Nix, JJ McCarthy, if you feel like they're a second round grade, it's going to be a first round for some of those guys. I'm not saying all, but when you look at the quarterback, it's just not as many avenues to get a player at that position for your signal caller. Now, one thing I'll also say about this draft, offensive linemen, I'm looking at Tyler Guyton, Jordan Morgan, J.C. Latham, Amarius Mims. Those tackle prospects in those corners, Cooper DeJean, Ennis Rakestraw, Terrion Arnold, Nate Wiggins, Kool-Aid McKinstry, a lot of different corners. And what I'm saying that for is you're going to see probably somewhere around the 14 to 20 range or that 20 to 25 range. Teams are going to go up and get players who you may not feel is the best tackle or a first round tackle, quote unquote, because they have to get their player right there. If you look at, okay, Latham comes off the board, Talise Fuaga comes off the board, even Graham Barton, Jackson Power Johnson, now we're scrambling and we're saying, okay, we got to get up and take one of these players because of just the player that he is, the positional value, and you have to look at those things and say, okay, we have to get this guy on our team and in our room. So I just wanted to say that. Now, Malik Neighbors, I talked about him a lot when talking about Rome Odunze. Not surprised he's the number 4 player here on this list. Dynamic receiver. Number 5, Drake May. And also, we're looking at the arrows on the left here. Some of these guys are going up. Some of these guys are going down. Got to scroll slow. Okay, so with Drake May, he's one spot down from number 4 on the last list, top 51.0. A lot of things that you look at here where a guy who's Tracy, of course, who can make all the throws, of course. You look at a guy who throws the football across the middle willingly with anticipation and with velocity to get between linebackers above safeties. But for me, I mean, you look at these receivers, we can make an argument. Neighbors, Adunze, even Marvin Harrison Jr. in most classes, and we're talking about the past decade, 10, 15 years, they could be number 1 receivers, all of those guys. Adunze could be a number 1 in a different draft class. Neighbors, same thing. Marvin Harrison Jr., he's the one in this class. But I really like Drake May here. Don't want to waste too much time because we've talked about these quarterbacks a lot. But now let's see who's at number 6. Will it be Jaden Daniels or will it be one of these tackles, defensive ends? Jaden Daniels, number 6, one spot down. So actually looking at this, we had Neighbors go up and Adunze stayed the same. Okay, so Neighbors came up for these 2 quarterbacks and the quarterbacks went down one spot. Now, the Jaden Daniels conversation, it's growing and it's growing and it's growing. One thing I saw, Marvin Harrison Jr., he's doing interviews at the draft combine, but he's not doing any workouts. No 40s, no vertical jumps. He's saving that for pro day. Jaden Daniels, a guy who's coming to the draft combine, but he's not running a 40. And you think about the type of player he is, I don't think he should run the 40 just because we already know the dynamic athlete that he is. It's not going to raise or lower his stock at any bit. But with the throwing motion, what he brings as a passer, had Brian Thomas Jr., had Malik Neighbors on the other side, and I really like him as a player. Now, the thing for me is just get him in the right situation. I think because of the dynamic runner he is, as a linear runner, and I talked about it, when you have quarterback draw, sweep, power, give him the football and go. It's one gap that you have to read Offensive line, create that gap. Let Jaden Daniels go, and he's going to get down the football field. This is a guy where you say, okay, maybe the floor of rushing yards in his rookie season is around 500 to 700 just because how dynamic he is. But you talk about the throw. Okay, has the rhythm bounce at the top of his drop? This was one thing we talked about. And really with the arm, I would say the deep ball is just one of the best you'll ever see in this draft. I mean, you look at Caleb Williams, he has a nice deep ball. His arm strength really allows him to throw the football as far as he wants to. But with Jaden Daniels, it's the touch, it's the quick release, and it's just effortless in one motion. And I think something that a lot of people will point to, something you'll see when you cut on the film, is just throwing with more velocity across the middle of the football field. I think for me, that's what Nix is really good at. Caleb Williams, Drake May, even you can go to Penix. He just has arm. I mean, you look at Michael Penix's arm strength alone, not even talking about the quarterback. He has one of the strongest arms we've seen in the draft. So those guys, just in that aspect, you talk about it and you really have to like that there. But Jaden Daniels, very, very good player. He's done it at the highest level. Heisman Trophy winner for the last college football season. And you look at the level of competition. Doing what he did in the SEC, I really like this. Brock Bowers, number 7. Really, really like Brock Bowers. People are going to say undersized tight end. We see the picture with Rob Gronkowski, and I keep pointing to it because it's just something you see. And I don't even think it's more so about Brock Bowers as it is Rob Gronkowski just being a freak of nature at the tight end position. But really, looking at this write-up, Bowers is an undersized tight end with elite speed, strength, and playmaking ability. Lined up all over the field at Georgia, in line on the wing, split out, and even at running back. So I want to pause right there, and we're going to talk about this guy a little bit. But you say, will the equity of this pick as a tight end? We think about the scales. The highest paid tight end right now is Darren Waller at $17 million per year. And this is something I talked about even in my mock draft because I think Brock Bowers is going top 15 for me just because of the player that he is. But you look a little deeper and say, with these tight ends per se, and having that fifth year option and how you can, I don't even want to say it because I think it's kind of disingenuous to Brock Bowers and what he can do, the versatility he brings to the position. And don't get it confused. Just because he's not as rocked up as some of these other tight ends, like you think about Michael Mayer, who came out of Notre Dame last year, just that big bodied guy, but still with Brock Bowers, he's not a liability in the blocking game. He can be in 11 personnel and hold his own. He can be in 12 personnel and hold his own. So you think about that and everything we already know he is as a receiver and the dynamic athlete. I mean, for me, I like number 7. Very, very good player. You say, okay, is he a generational tight end? Because we just had this conversation a couple years back with Kyle Pitts. And like I said, it's disingenuous to kind of compare some of those things because you say, okay, Kyle Pitts, he had Marcus Mariota, Desmond Ritter, Taylor Heinicke. So you feel uncomfortable with the quarterbacks who are getting him the football, but hopefully that changes this year. Number 8, Terrion Arnold, my cornerback one. I feel very good about this. I want to look at the read up for this one. Arnold has ideal size, speed, and instincts for the position. He plays both outside and inside at the nickel position. Effective in press and off coverage. Fluid to open and mirror in press. Has plenty of speed to stay in phase on deep balls. And from off coverage, smooth and quick pedal. One thing I talked about, and this is something I talked about in my mock draft, I want to see how do you transition from out of phase to in phase? How can you say, okay, if my receiver gets a little bit of separation on this route, I have to have the recovery speed to now break on this football and make a quarterback who thinks a window is open, who thinks a throw is open, make him wrong, even if he's right. I think that's what you see with Terrion Arnold. And like I said, even in the run game, he missed some tackles, and you're going to see that pop up occasionally. That tape is scattered throughout there, but he's willing to do it. He's going to come up and try to make those tackles. So you see it. He's a physical face-up tackler. He doesn't miss tackles in space, and I think you can say that with a guy who you feel comfortable in space with. Everybody's going to miss tackles. That's what I'm saying. But when you talk about a guy who wants to stop the run, who wants to come up on a perimeter and make those tackles on receivers, on running backs, on screen passes, I think that's Terrion Arnold. Like this at number 8. Now, number 9, Joe Alt. And this is what we're seeing here. Talking about Joe Alt. Started at tackle all three of his seasons at Notre Dame, boasting exceptional size and length for the position. In pass pro, he plays with a wide base and is very under control. Now, I want to get into some more of these players. So as we look at Joe Alt, we look at some of these other players, I think we kind of feel comfortable. You watch Joe Alt's tape, the technique is beautiful. He finishes blocks, he's nasty. I like a lot of things with Joe Alt. The only thing I would say about some of these other tackles is how they move in space a little bit, how athletic they are. But with Joe Alt, it's not that he's not athletic to where he's limited within blocking scheme. If you have a gap scheme, if you have a zone scheme, he can do whatever you want him to do at that left tackle position. Now, getting to number 10, as we talk, Talise Fuaga. See, for me, this is interesting. He's one spot up from where he was on top 51.0, but I actually want to talk about this right up. Fuaga has outstanding size, power, and balance for the position. He lines up at right tackle, but I believe he could play on the left side if necessary. I agree to that. In pass pro, quick feet out of his stance, explosive with his punch. That's one thing you'll see pop up on tape. Physical in the run game, even physical as a blocker with his punch and his delivery. Stuns rushers, stays attached, and is always on balance. Aware versus games and blitzes. One thing I'll just bring up quickly with Joe Alt. When I saw stunts and blitzes, you talk about left tackle awareness. Joe Alt is the epitome of that. But back to Talise Fuaga, I digressed. He creates movement on down blocks and always looks to finish. He's surprisingly nimble to reach and cut off on the backside. So a lot of good things that you'll see. And with Talise, a lot of people are projecting inside. And for me, I want to see it. I'm all about getting the best five on the football field. If Talisa Fuaga is my best five at tackle, perfectly fine. If he's my best five at guard, perfectly fine. One of these teams that needs an offensive lineman, get Talisa Fuaga. That's where I'm at with it right now. Now, number 11, Dallas Turner. Athletic as they get at the edge position. Long athletic edge, excellent production, intriguing skill set as a pass rusher. I like this because this is where we're going to talk about the combine a little bit. I'm going to drop a video, hopefully, if I can get to it, about players to watch at the draft combine. And Liatula 2 is going to be probably at the top of that list. And I think with the production, with the pass rush prowess, talking about moves and hand fighting and counter rushes, I really like Latu. But it's not that Dallas Turner is far off of that. He's a very polished, very, very good defensive lineman. He's going to help your edge, talking about year one and day one. So you bring that in. He's the bendiest guy out of he versus Latu, probably the most athletic that I would say comfortably. You look at Jared Verse, he's just a different type of rusher when he gets to the quarterback. So I like this right here. Not a surprise. Number 12, Olu Fashanu. Let's see what they say right here. Ideal size, length, and strength for the left tackle position. In pass pro, explodes out of his stance, redirects easily. And we really know this right now. Talking about Olu Fashanu, I think when you talk about just developing against power. Now, it's not all strength, but it's really more so how do you gear it technique wise? How can the offensive line coach and whoever's going to get him? I really think that, okay, if Joe Alt, maybe if he goes over there with Harbaugh in the Los Angeles Chargers, and I'm thinking maybe if Joe Alt goes before the Tennessee Titans selection, I would really like Olu Fashanu in the ceiling of what he has with a guy like Bill Callahan, brand new offensive line coach, father of new head coach Brian Callahan for the Tennessee Titans. So I like that connection right there. I think if you can pair him with a guy who's seen it, been there, done that with the best of the best at the position, you get a guy who's athletic as they get, who's kind of refined as a pass protector against finesse when we talk about hand fighting there. So I like that. It's just some small things to clean up. A very, very good player. JC Latham, whatever you want to call him. Very, very good player. Intimidating. That's the first thing that comes to mind when you talk about JC Latham. Right here, you see it. Is a massive right tackle, enormous power base, and taps into it in both the run and the pass game. You think about some of those power blockers, like I said with Talise Fuaga, like you're going to see with JC Latham. The question is, when you talk about scheme, is he more fit for a gap scheme? And that's kind of the small subtleties that you're going to see with some of these teams. If I'm a gap team, I want to get Latham. If I'm a zone team, maybe I'm looking at Guyton. Maybe I'm looking at some of these other guys. So just a quick thing that you have to talk about and touch on there. But getting back to the write-up, he has vice grips for hands. JC Latham latches on to you. JC Latham latches on. That just sounds like it rolls off the tongue. But if he does that, you better go tell your corner, not today. I can't help you. It's going to be a long day at the office if you're a cornerback and J.C. Latham has your defensive end lashed up. But you see it right here. He flashed the ability to recover, torque, and dump opponents. One thing I'll say is that he doesn't have the foot quickness and really athleticism that you talk about when you talk about the top guys, kind of like Alt, kind of like Fashanu. And you think about some of these other players. DeJuan Jones, very, very good tackle prospect out of Ohio State, did some good work for the Cleveland Browns pre-injury. But you say that's just one of the things that you kind of worry about. And the biggest player that people are going to talk about when you talk about foot quickness, athleticism, gearing towards that being that massive traditional right tackle, Evan Neal. Fearing that Evan Neal and JC Latham are looking at each other in the mirror and they're the same guy. I don't see that, and I'm going to look at more tape, trying to see those similarities that other people are talking about, trying to get to some of those subtleties and some of those little things that I could touch on and point out. But I don't think that you're getting that same type of player here. And also, if you put him in the right scheme, ask him to do what he's comfortable at, because we can see guys like that, those massive right tackles, can succeed in the NFL. And I pointed to Juan Jones, who had good success as a rookie before the injury. Now, getting to number 14, Jared Verse, rugged, twitched up edge rusher, thick, powerful, a guy who I feel personally, when you cut on some of those Florida State games, and I'll just make a quick joke right here, it was like, okay, Jordan Travis is hurt. Let's still put these guys in the college football playoff. Let Jared Verse go get 6 sacks and bring it home for the Florida State Seminoles. But in all seriousness, you think about that traditional power rusher who's athletic, a monster against the run. I think when you look at some of these teams in the NFL draft and kind of who you compare them with, it's a lot of options. And I feel like there's going to be a conversation. Some teams may like him even more than Dallas Turner. I feel right now Turner is consensus edge one, but you still have to have a conversation about he, Verse, and Latu. So I like this selection right here. I'd be surprised to see where Latu lands in this top 50. Number 15, Quinion Mitchell. Now, this is interesting because we talk about a guy, and when I think Quinion Mitchell, I think 4 interceptions in one football game. I mean, ball production. And that's what you're going to see with teams. How do they view that? Do they view, okay, some of these other things we look at? I think he's technically sound as a corner on press coverage and off man coverage, off press coverage. But some teams are going to say, maybe I like Wiggins a little more. Maybe Cooper DeJean is my ideal fit. But if I want just ball production, and that can be the determining factor over guys who I feel can both cover, who can both do some different things, who are both aware, talking about route combinations, understanding what that is in the back end, maybe the ball production and kind of what this draft combine is going to look like for Quinion Mitchell. He can go as a corner, but that may be something I lean towards. It's just one little thing there, but I like Quinion Mitchell, cornerback too. Feel good about that. I'm still debating between he and Wiggins, going to watch that some more just to kind of finalize that, but I like those two players. Now, Brian Thomas Jr., one spot down, 16th ranked player, receiver right here. Thomas is a big, explosive wideout with incredible production, including the FBS best 17 touchdown catches. Lines up inside and out. Big play guy, can get down the football field. Interested to see what he runs, but teams already know. You watch the tape, he's one of those guys where you think about not comparing the player, but just comparing the foot speed. Tank Dell. Looking at the 40 Tank Dell ran, but you watch the tape and you say, okay, I see a guy at the University of Houston who's returning all of these kicks, who's running these routes like an extraordinaire, and the foot speed is there. The burst and the suddenness is there, but the 40 is not what I thought it would be for a guy that size. Even Jalen Hyatt. You look at it and say, okay, I thought maybe he can get low for a 3, high for a 2, and then he kind of ran in that 4-4 range. So it's just those types of things where you got to trust the tape. I like that. They're very good receiver, and he's gonna be a day one guy for some team in the first round. Now, Troy Fontenot, number 17. This is another guy you're gonna talk about when you talk about that conversation. Do I want Fontenot? Do I want Latham, Mims, Guyton, Fontenot? And the thing for Fontenot is he brings that versatility. We saw what he did at Washington, played left tackle there. And I think with all of these guys, it's just about what is your scheme, what is your philosophy, and who do you feel is the best fit for your best five? But talking about the write up, overall, Daniel Jeremiah says he views Fontenot as a starting tackle with positional flexibility to play all five O-line spots. Very explosive as a puller, on screens, the ability to get all the way to the third level in a hurry. Very, very athletic guy, can make every block that you want. Now, number 18, we just had the conversation. Tyler Guyton, long, tall, rangy tackle, very, very athletic guy. And I want to get to that part of the write-up. In the run game, he moves like a tight end, can reach and cut off easily, excelling in space. He's exceptional as a puller because of his athleticism and balance on the perimeter. So I think if you want to take a guy that's that's not kind of where Olu is right now, but just a tick under, you talk about, okay, we have a baseline we can work with here. You have all of these athletic traits and tools. Now we're just going to build you up with our offensive line coach, let you develop within our scheme. I feel he's a very good player. Right now, I think in my mock draft, I had him going to the Dallas Cowboys. I still feel that's a very good team for him. So I like that right there, number 18. Now, number 19, Amarius Mims. And this is kind of what I said. When you talk about these players who, it's going to be a run. It's going to be Mims. It's going to be Latham. It's going to be Guy. And it's going to be that run right there when we talk about these players. And the only thing with Mims is just didn't play as much as some of these other guys. I want to talk about this right here. I know he has it. To see him at his best, watch the college football playoff game against Ohio State in 2022 when he was healthy and dominant. Battled through an injury during the 2023 season. Overall, there's a risk because of the limited body of work, but still a very, very good player. And I think combine pans out, the physicals check out, you have a very, very good player that you're getting there. You're not too concerned about that. Now, number 20, actually, Laya Tula 2. And we've talked about him already. Very, very good player when you look at this right here. For me, I think when we talk about really the athleticism and some of the things that we talk about, and even the physicals, because we're going to have to see with some of these injury concerns that are out there for Liatula too, how that all pans out at the combines when they do that. But overall, you talk about a very, very good player. My range that I'm looking at right now, I could honestly see probably anywhere from 14 to the low 20s. That's the type of player that I view Latu is. And even if one of those teams, like the Minnesota Vikings, for example, if they want to go edge and they bite and they like Latu more than another edge, it's just something you have to account for. Number 21, this is a football player who I've watched, and I had to get to more of my linebackers and safeties, but I got to see Edgerton Cooper. It was kind of really the first guy I watched at the position. And for me, when you watch this guy, you say, okay, automatically pops off the screen. Big guy, can move. They used him to blitz. He did a lot of different things in coverage, ran the pole, was in man coverage a lot of different things in zone coverage. You think about off-ball linebackers, and we just haven't seen a lot of Edgerton Cooper steam in the first round just because some positions are a little bit richer. But I wouldn't be surprised. I think if any linebacker, because you talk about, okay, Peyton Wilson, Jeremiah Trotter, some of the linebackers in this class, if there was one guy who a team bid on, I think it would be Edgerton Cooper. Talking about the write-up, Cooper is a long-ranging linebacker, excellent speed and coverage ability. Against the pass, very smooth in his drops, plays with vision and awareness. Very comfortable in man coverage. My only thing I would say is, and with the linebacker position, getting up to speed in the NFL. We go to Jack Campbell, one of the most technically sound linebackers you would have ever saw when he came out of Iowa. But the NFL is just a little different. Getting into that pace, getting into that rhythm as a linebacker. And that's why I say, okay, that's why a couple of years back, when Luke Kuechly was doing what he was doing, when Bobby Wagner was able to do what he was doing, some of these guys so young and so early, that's why it just shocks you. Even with Sam Laporta going to the tight end position, it's just some of those positions are a little bit different coming into the NFL, and I think this is one, but still a very good player. Byron Murphy at 22. So we got him ranked over Jerzon Newton, and I think a lot of people are coming to that conclusion now. Really like Johnny Newton. I know he's going to be on this list, but you talk about Byron Murphy, very explosive, nimble. I watched Byron Murphy's film. He's already one of the guys that I'm finished on. And just talking about that, he's a guy who I see, because I had him going to the Texans in my mock draft. I don't see him lasting that long. I'm gonna just be honest. If it's a team that trades up If it's a team that just says, okay, we need a different position kind of a little bit, but we just want a player who's going to be an impact player. Think Kalijah Cansey. When the Tampa Bay Buccaneers had a couple of different avenues they could have took last year in the draft, they went Kalijah Cansey, and we saw what Kalijah Cansey did. Think about the playoff game versus the Detroit Lions. Think about the playoff game versus the Philadelphia Eagles. Very, very good in his rookie season. So when you look at a guy like this, that three tech, really he and Jerzon, but he can also wear a couple of different hats for you. He's not a guy who's going to be your down and down zero tech, talking about 320, 330 pounds, but still is a pass rusher from the interior. You look at all of these guys who are wreaking havoc in the NFL: Aleem McNeil, Javon Hargrave, Kobe Turner, very, very good players. Even Aaron Donald, Quinn, it's just a lot of different players who can do things from that three tech position. So like that. And it's Rick Straw Jr., one spot up. So we haven't seen Cooper DeJean yet, right here, but we got Ennis Rick Straw, cornerback out of Missouri. And what I think about is aggressiveness. And funny because I say that, because when I'm getting to talking about him, you look at what he can do as a corner. The only thing you would say is, okay, if he's beat, you're going to see him grab some. But his aggressiveness also pops up on tape in the running game. Very willing. Along with Cooper DeJean, Arnold, some of these other guys you're going to see, one of the better guys at stopping the run, coming up and making tackles on a perimeter. But right here we see rangy, fluid cornerback who plays with energy and toughness. Physical and press coverage, stays attached underneath and vertically. Talking about some of these other things. He's awesome against the run. Not only is he quick to key and read, but he attacks blockers, including offensive linemen. So for this, you say, okay, one thing is little grabby, and you could say that about a lot of these corners in this draft because you can get away with it more in college football. But just raising his ball production, that's always what you want to see from a corner. Very, very good player, and I like this. I'm just surprised I haven't seen DeJean yet. Number 24, Chop Robinson. This is one of the guys that we talk about. Braylon Trice, we talk about Chop Robinson. I think when we talk about just raw athleticism, this is a guy who's just about as athletic as you can talk about, as athletic as they'll probably get when you talk about this position. But development, young football player, is going to do some more things. And I think the best football for Chop Robinson is ahead of him. Talking about the write-up right here, Robinson is extremely twitched up edge rusher with limited production, has average size, but is incredibly explosive. As a pass rusher, he has excellent get-off quickness, and this is what you'll see flash on tape. Do you want him as kind of that 3-4 stand-up or the 4-3 down lineman? That's one thing I say, but I think when you look at the tape for Penn State, had his hand in the dirt a lot, and he just flies off the football. Flashes a nifty two-hand swipe maneuver and a push-pull move. Has some tightness that shows up when he gets to the top of his rush. This is referring to Ben. So you look at that, and the production isn't there from what you'll like from some of these day one guys, but I wouldn't be surprised if a team in that 26 to 32 range takes Chop Robinson and say, okay, we're going to develop you with the best of our defensive line, and the future is ahead of you. Number 25, Nate Wiggins. Now, I'm interested to see this because I really like Nate Wiggins, and I want to see what he says right here and some of the negatives. I was a little disappointed in the lack of aggression against the run. He is content to hang on blocks at times, and his effort to chase from the backside is spotty at best. Some of this could be due to high play counts, but it's still bothersome. And this is definitely something you can say, okay, it pops up on tape. You don't like to see it, but you also have to say, some of the things he said, this could be due to high snap count. You have to add a little bit of context into some of these things. Now, even with it, some guys who play every down on defense still have high effort, high motor. But I really like Nate Wiggins as a corner. You look at what he can do in coverage, it's just going to be your pick of the litter. When you talk about DeJean, Rakestraw, Queen Mitchell, it's going to be that pick of the litter.